Okay, it's going. This is good. Okay, welcome people. You can sit over here if you're in the audience. I'm going to sign. She's going to voice for me. She's going to sit here. She's one of the computers. And
welcome everyone. I believe that this is the first time that we have ever had a deaf-hosted political panel. So that's wonderful. The people who are sitting up in front of you today are going to introduce themselves. We're going to start with the person who's closest to me and then move down the line. So if you guys wouldn't mind just answering a couple of short questions. In deaf culture, it is appropriate to be clear and blunt. Deaf people prefer blunt communication, and that is a way to show respect for us. We're all going to have an opportunity to speak. You'll have enough time. I'll let you know if you're going on too long, and I'll tell you that your time is running out, and we should move on to the next person. I'll have this yellow card here to warn you that your time is getting close to the other card to say, just stop. You need to move on. So, if you wouldn't mind starting the introductions, please tell us about your name as it will appear on the ballot, what city you live in, how long you've lived there, how long you've lived in Washington State, what position you're running for, if you are an incumbent or if you are challenging the current incumbent. If you are an incumbent, would you mind explaining how long you've served here? All right, let's go ahead and start.
Okay, I'm going to try one thing first.
Hi, my name is Julie.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm the incumbent. Now, can you repeat all those questions really quickly? So
Yes. Yes, I can say it again.
I live in Richfield, Washington. I've lived there since 1993. I lived in Washington State my whole life. Other questions? There are a lot of them. Sorry.
That's okay. What specifically, what position are you running for?
I'm running for County Council District 2. I was elected to that office in 2015. It was the first time that the charter has been passed, and so I'm the first District 2 County Councilor. Prior to that, I was elected on the Richfield School Board from 2005 to 2013. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Beneman. I'm running for County Council District 2 as well. I am not the incumbent. I've lived in Washington State for about 13 years, though I was born in Yakima. Lived there till I was just a baby, and then we unfortunately lived in Southern California and got smart and came up this way. But I've been in the Pacific Northwest for over 20 years. What was the other question?
It was what position you running for, if you were the challenger, and that was it.
Okay, I guess I was blunt and I got it.
That was wonderful, thank you. Next person.
My name is Eileen Quiring, and I currently am a county councilor for District 4. I was elected to that position 2 years ago, or will be 2 years in November. I'm currently running for the position of chair. There is no incumbent. It is an open seat now. Well, actually, I took the primary, and so I am running for the chair position. I came back to Washington in 2009. However, I grew up here, graduated from high school here, and went to various different states, and then came back to Washington because I have family here and wanted to be near my family. Let's see, what are the other things?
I think that's it, but I'm curious about what things.
You said that you took the chair?
Well, I didn't take, I won the primary election. Therefore, the incumbent chair will not be the chair any longer. I beat him. That's one.
That's what clear compared to blood. Thank you so much for expanding on that. Next person.
My name is Eric Holt, and I've lived in Pacific Northwest since 2010. I moved my family out here from Utah because we believe that the Northwest is the best place to live in the entire U.S. I'm running for the same position, Clark County Council Chair, and to clarify her statement, we both knocked out the current incumbent, and so that's what made it an
We're the
open
top
seat.
two.
We're the top two vote getters, and that's how it passes through in Washington, how that works. The top two vote getters move on.
Top two people, they compete, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you for expanding and clarifying that. So the last person there.
My name is Temple Lentz, and I'm running for Clark County Council District 1. District 1 is essentially West Vancouver. It's not entirely city limits, but mostly from 205 all the way west, mostly city limits of Vancouver. I am originally from the Midwest. I grew up in Ohio and went to school in Chicago. And I've lived in Vancouver and Washington State since 2008, so about 10 years. And I am not the incumbent in this seat. She did not choose to attend today, so I'm here to talk to you about running.
The other woman who was running for that position couldn't make it today. She decided that this wasn't a good time for her to come. The next question that I have for you has 3 parts. Well, really, they're 3 different questions in one. And then once I'm done asking you questions, then it'll be the audience's turn to ask questions. At that time, I want to give you guys a chance to ask the questions by standing in a line towards the door side of the room. There was one person who was unable to show up, which means we only have 5 of the 6 people who are candidates. I wanted to ask you 5 why you were excited to come to this event. Why did you think that it was important to come and meet the deaf community?
Let me start with you.
I was thrilled to get the invitation. As a counselor, we have to deal with disabilities of all kinds as policymakers. Frankly, we've had some issues at our county jail where we've lost lawsuits with regard to not having adequate resources for the hearing impaired. So that's one. From a policymaker standpoint, I think it's important that we understand the challenges that the deaf community faces that we simply don't understand on our own. So I thought it was a great opportunity actually to get an opportunity to meet with you and have a better understanding of what those challenges might be and how we can address those here locally.
Thank you. I like to give feedback information to hearing people that are in the audience on the panel, just so you know. Hearing people prefer to soften and extend the word deaf to be hearing impaired. But deaf people do not prefer that. Their preferred identity is deaf, as in proud deaf. Just so you know, if you're talking with people that use sign language and they're deaf, they prefer proud deaf or deaf people or deaf community. That's their identity. Hearing impaired was created by doctors to say you need fixed. It means
defective in a sense.
But thank you so much. Next person.
I am thrilled to be here. I was excited to receive the communication and find out that this was the first panel of this type taking place. So it's tremendous, and I am saddened to think that you guys are disenfranchised in any way. I was always taught to care for the most vulnerable and needy people in the community, and it starts at the local level, so I'm excited to see what I can do to help you guys.
Thank you. Next person.
Okay, I was excited to come too. I was excited to get the invitation, and it seemed a little unusual to me. And but in just in looking a little bit on the website, the National NAR is NAD, National
NAD.
Association of the Deaf, to discover some of the issues, because as Julie noted, the county has had some problems in our justice system, not providing the kind of things that you need in order to communicate. And just, it was very interesting just to hear you right now say that deaf people want to be called deaf. And these are all things that we don't really understand. And I want to know more. I want to hear from you folks about what it is that you care about. What issues do you think need to be addressed? And so I was excited to come, and I hope that you learn something from us too, but especially us, learning something from you.
Thank you so much. Next person.
Well, I'm here because everybody in our community is valuable and everybody has something important to share, and that's why it's so vital that we try to make it to every forum, of any form that we can, as leaders and as potential leaders. Everybody in this community has value, and we have to be there for it.
Thank you. Last person there.
I feel the same way. I think it shows all of us showed up, all of us are interested in hearing what's important to you. I personally believe very strongly in inclusive leadership, that our community can do a lot more to be inclusive throughout our community. We hear a lot these days, there's a lot of buzzwords about gender equity and racial equity. We also need to think about everybody else and all of the other different cultures that need to be more fully included in our community. And that's not just hearing what you have to say, but also helping open the doors to opportunities for you to participate even more actively.
Thank you. So the second question I'm going to ask you is...
Knock, knock.
I heard somebody. Okay, so
Alright, my second question for you. Have you ever met any deaf people in the past? And if so, what did you learn from them? If not, then what were the boundaries and barriers that prevented you from being able to reach out to the deaf community before this? How are you going to learn about our issues? In this question, you'll only have 3 minutes to answer.
you can start.
So, my niece is an actress and had the opportunity to play to perform in a play called Spring Awakening. And it was a revival of a prior show that had been done on Broadway. But in this particular performance, there were 2 actors and 2 actresses. One a hearing actor or actress, and one a deaf actor or actress. And so the 2 actors played the same role, and it was a musical. So I had the chance to spend some time with, because she was on the cast, I went to see her show in Los Angeles, and I went to see, when they went to a bigger theater in LA, I went to see it again. And then they actually went to Broadway with the show. They played Broadway for 8 weeks, I think. They got nominated for a Tony Award. And I got to spend some time with the cast, both the hearing and the deaf cast members, and both before the show and after the show. And it was a really phenomenal experience for me, because I hadn't been around deaf people prior to that. And to watch my niece learn sign language so quickly and be so then entrenched in the community there that they were just sitting with them and communicating with them and watching them communicate with each other was a fascinating experience for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, and to not really be exposed or spend much time with the deaf community after that's been a little bit of a disappointment, I think. So, but I loved it. It was great. And the show was phenomenal.
It's interesting that performance, I know exactly what you're talking about, how they have the deaf actors involved in that. And I met one of the men who acted in it. He went to Gallaudet University. So we're friends on Facebook now. That's really interesting. It's something.
That's cool.
It was a great show. Great show.
Yeah.
He's living in California right now.
So is my niece.
We are? All right.
What's his name?
Talk about that later. Talk about it later. In our video.
Yes, I have come across deaf people, and one instance I can think of is I volunteer with my family at Fort Vancouver National Historic Site, and I dressed up 1830s in a dress, and we do a lot of fun activities throughout the year. One of them is Christmas at the Fort, and last year we had a group of deaf people come through, and we were doing some handicrafts. It was interesting to try to communicate not knowing sign language. I am a very animated speaker in general, so I think I did my best to try to talk slowly and incorporate my hand movements. I don't know if it was getting anywhere, but it was eye-opening, and I thought, wow, I wish that I had been able to communicate better, and it would have been nice if there was somebody at the fort who could have helped with that situation. But they were lovely people, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I don't have any problems with doing that. It would be a nice challenge to be able to do that better, and that's just me being brutally honest and blunt. So there you go.
Thank you. For honest blunt.
One interesting idea that you just mentioned is when you say that you said that you are acting at the fort there. Did you know that at the fort, the Washington School for the Deaf is nearby? And they actually, in that area, before they used to have the, okay, I'm an interpreter, Eric, so.
I can voice it. Yeah, okay.
So where the current Washington School for the Deaf is where the original Fort Vancouver used to be. And the Washington School for the Deaf was set up 100 years ago. So.
I did know that. That's wonderful.
Okay. Actually, I don't know, have not been well acquainted with any deaf people. I do know, I was told today at church that there is a woman at our church that I should check with about various issues because she has 2 deaf daughters. Now they're out of the home now. One is not living in the state any longer, so they're older daughters. And I feel like probably the roadblock is I don't know your language, and I should learn it. Shame on me, but I really should learn sign language. I will tell you, there is another woman in our church that actually signs while we sing various songs in worship, and it is so intriguing to me to watch her sign those words. It's very inspiring. And so I enjoy sitting behind her and watching her sign as I sing and know the words that she's signing. But I would like to get to know more deaf people, but I certainly would also want to speak with them, which means I need to learn sign language.
Joe, this is an opportunity here today.
Because we have deaf people here in the audience, this is a good opportunity to make some connections with them and build a bridge between the deaf and hearing communities.
Well, one of my very first jobs when I was very young was at a retirement center, elderly home. And though I haven't had much interaction with the deaf community, I had a lot of interaction with people who are hard of hearing, which very quickly evolves into a deaf community when, as all of us age. I myself am starting to lose a certain percentage of my hearing, and in time I probably will lose a great percentage of it. And so I think we need to be cognizant of the reality that the community is much larger than those who are just the immediate deaf, but all of us who will eventually need to be able to communicate in other ways when we lose that ability to clearly communicate. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is this is a much larger spectrum of people and interaction between people than just a very small defined group of just the deaf people. So, I'm sorry, that wasn't probably very clear, but my point was that it's a much bigger issue that affects a large group of people than we think.
Now they don't know
Maybe you don't know how many deaf people use sign language as opposed to those who are senior citizens with a hearing loss. We actually aren't sure because we don't have the data about that. Our government census isn't interested in collecting data about that.
Huh.
That's true. I tried to find it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I think we
Can you say what you just said again? What did you mean by the military? You mean there's no data about that right now? And data is clarified. Yes, we don't have data about senior citizens who wear hearing aids, who have hearing loss, how many deaf use sign language, how many use ASL. And we don't have any data about that language information. And this person right here just recently commented that she tried to find that information. For the deaf and hard of hearing community all over the state, there's a problem because people are spread out and isolated. So we don't have a way to collect the data about people all across the state because they're so separated. And also, sometimes people move across state boundaries and then we might miss them in our counts. So that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to collect data. And then the last person?
In thinking about answering this, I was thinking about two people that I've known. One, a girl I grew up with in high school. She was nearly deaf, nearly fully deaf from birth, and she